Alright, here's the deal. I'm very sick right now, so I wanted to make other videos, but there's been this movie in the back of my mind for roughly a year now ever since I watched it. It's called The Plague Dogs, and I figured, hey, since I'm sick, it would be kind of funny, oh haha, I'm sick, I watched The Plague Dogs, I talk about the plague. But the reason The Plague Dogs has been on my mind for a year now is because it's it's the bleakest movie I have ever seen. So let me give you some context. This movie was made in... Let me look it up. This movie was made in 1982. In 1979, Margaret Thatcher became the Prime Minister of the UK. Now, I was born too late for when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. However, I was born just in time for when she died. But all I can gather from the UK in the 80s was that it was filled with lots of fear. It was very dreadful to be alive as a British person in the 80s. I gather this completely because both the US and the UK, the PSAs, okay, you take the average PSA. If you're American, you know what a dog shelter PSA looks like. You know, the fucking woman singing in the background with the sad puppies and shit. In the 80s, the UK didn't do that. They just threatened to kill the fucking things. They just threatened murder on dogs and hoping you'd give money to them.
Please give us £1, or we'll have to pull the trigger.
I don't know what the suicide rate was in 80s British. It had to have been high, though, because I don't know how you guys lived with that depressing of a life. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. But an example of depressing 80s UK media is the Plague Dogs. Now, some context, it has the same author and director as Watership Down. Richard Adams wrote the novel for both. I don't know who the director is, but he directed both. And Watership Down is already known as a pretty graphic, depressing movie. I'd say it's one of those like top 10 depressing kids movies. But the Plague Dogs are usually on that list too, but it's mainly for just one scene where the dog accidentally shoots the farmer in the face with a shotgun. That's usually the one scene people know this movie for. And yeah, it's a pretty shocking scene, but if you go and you watch the rest of the movie, you'll find out there's a few more scenes like that are pretty depressing. So I just wanted to, while I'm sick, I want to sit back, relax, talk about the Plague Dogs. It starts off with what is already probably like the most grim title sequence. A grim title sequence. It's a completely black background with this piercing blood red text. I have never seen the name Richard Harkness with such darkness. Also in the background you notice like splashing. There's these sounds of splashing and whimpering, and oh, what do you know, a dog is almost drowning to death. Oh, and there's a lab experiment. Oh, isn't this such an uplifting beginning to the movie? Also, I'll get this out of the way. Yeah, the movie's well animated. Good job. You animated the most depressing fucking movie in the world is well animated. Good job. So you see a bunch of these dogs in the laboratory, and one of them's dead, so the British guy, he goes, oh, poor thing, and he scoops it up with a fucking shovel. The dogs are animated like normal dogs too, so any movement they do, it just feels painful. By the way, we meet our two main protagonists, Ralph and Snitter. Yeah, Snitter had open brain surgery. There is dialogue that goes on in the film, but honestly, it's kind of hard to hear.
White coats.
Like the accent, it's not that the accents are thick or anything, but it's very quiet, and they're always talking about something existential. Oh, why do they do this to us, Snitter? It's not fun. It's not fun to hear these dogs, talk about how miserable their life in a lab testing facility is. I already know how bad animal testing is. I don't need a movie to tell me how bad it is. But British people in the 80s did, and they made it as bad as it looks, I guess. Also, we get a reflection of Snitter's past. He had an owner just like any dog would, but the owner saved Snitter's life by pushing him out of the way of a moving truck, and the owner died. Like, it's almost comical how fucking depressing this movie is, but it's not, because it's sad. Like, all of this is sad, but it's almost overbearingly sad that you don't feel anything. Because immediately after, these dogs almost get incinerated. And you know that dog that got scooped by the shovel? It's fucking bones now, so there's that. But I guess if there's a silver lining, the dogs have escaped the lab now. Yay. Yay! The dogs have escaped. Yay! Now they have to face off the brutal wilds of the dog has a seizure, by the way. Then the dogs, after exploring the wild for a while, they meet these shepherd dogs, and honest to God, the accents are too fucking thick. I can't understand a single word they say.
Are now out of their minds, chasing yows up and down fell, snapping and biting.
It's not that the accents are thick or anything. It's just British talk. I can't understand a single fucking word. I promise this movie isn't just all depressing moments, scary moments, but the moments that aren't are boring. About 70% of this movie is boring. Like, there's like a minute-long interaction about like Skitter. He talks about how he found a cave, and I already forgot the black dog's name. But the black dog, he's like, I'm sure there's nothing good there. Then Skitter's like, oh no, sure, there is something good in the cave. And then the black, oh, I don't know, blah, 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 blah. And then Skitter eventually convinces him to look inside the cave. It's so fucking boring. I love one scene where it cuts back to the sheep that the dogs ate. It's just fucking, it's so graphic, but you just have the farmer like, oh the dogs ate the sheep, oh, poor thing. Maybe there's just a cultural barrier. Also, the two dogs, they meet the fox character.
Lying flat out on the fells like there was neither dogs nor shepherd about. You kills a sheep, bolts it down, shoots away for the smell, and comes back and
Eventually, they kill more sheep. Fox eats some eggs. Alright, let me try to find another depressing part. Oh, here's the farmer scene. Okay, so throughout this whole movie, these dogs are put into the harshest circumstances, out of their control, right? But then there's this guy. He's actually friendly towards the dogs. He sees Skitter or something. He's like, oh, look at the poor. Say, hey, come here. Trying to call the dog, and Skitter actually sees how friendly the fucking thing, the farmer is, and then he shoots him in the face. Thankfully, the British have some leeway. When this guy gets blasted in the face with a shotgun point blank, you know, his head doesn't explode clean off. You know, it's more just like he's crying a stream of blood, and then he dies. So there's that. Yeah, this is considered like the most brutal part of the movie, but it's actually not. It's the most shocking thing you would see if you've never heard of the movie. But if you've watched the context of like the last 30 minutes beforehand, you realize this scene actually isn't too bad. And honestly, they overdo it. When this guy gets shot in the face, they have to like play this nightmarish synth music. Like every scary moment in this movie has to be like have a PSA energy. This is the PSA on gun violence, and we have to make sure kids will never touch a gun and do anything stupid. So this is the gun PSA scene. That's what this is more than anything. Eventually, the title of the movie comes in. People start to realize these dogs are from the laboratory. And it turns out they might have a case of the plague. In the spirit of this movie being depressing, the next logical thing for the government to do is to kill these dogs. They want to kill them. And I'll be honest, I'm skipping so much of this fucking movie right now. Nothing happens. They're in a house and they talk about how they're in danger. But now it's winter, and you know, that means the conditions are even more harsh to survive. Wow, these dogs just might not make it out alive. Who would have thought? Alright, here's a good scene. There's this sniper that's been trying to kill these dogs, right? So he finally gets on a cliff and he's ready to shoot them. But the fox is clutch. The fox comes in, makes the sniper fall off a cliff and die. That's not even the good part. Once the guy dies, they just eat him because, by the way, it's winter. They're starving, so they eat him.
I wish you could smell what I'm smelling. Crispy
Who was this movie made for? Eventually, the entire British army tries to kill these dogs, and they corner the dogs to the point where they're only able to swim. So they keep swimming, and the end of the movie has a hypothetical. Naturally, it parallels the beginning of the movie. You had this dog drowning, but now he's swimming again. Will he prevail? Because allegedly, the black dog sees an island, and he tells Skitter, "Alright, Skitter, trust me on this, you gotta keep swimming so we can get to the island." But considering the rest of this movie, there's no fucking way there was an island. Both of them are drowned. They're drowned. It's as simple as that. They're fucking dead. A movie this depressing does not have a happy ending. I don't know who this movie was made for. It wasn't made for children. I know that much. Like, the fucking theatrical poster does not look like a kid's movie. The dogs look uncanny. Like, everything about this is just awful. I don't know what's wrong with Britain in the 80s, but you've given me enough energy, a sick man. You've given me enough energy to complain about your shitty baked bean movie. This video is called Crondle Explains the Plague Dogs. I didn't explain shit. So let me explain what this movie's about. It's about, if you want to live, you're constantly fighting. I don't know. This movie's like cancer. No matter how much you fight against cancer, it just fucking kills you if it's stage 4. And I let's be honest here, I think the entire military trying to kill you is a stage 4 terminal death.